My husband celebrated with his mistress, so I walked in with the man she forgot to divorce. Please stay with me as I tell my story. And please, do not forget to support our channel by subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and sharing your loved one. Your support means the world to us. Now to our story. MPO. I walked in wearing heels, red lipstick, and a grin wide enough to hide the wreckage in my chest. My husband raised his glass, smiling like a man who thought he'd won, toasting a woman who wasn't me. The room went quiet when he saw me, but it wasn't just me he saw. Right behind me stood the man she forgot she was still legally married to. 2 weeks earlier, I had a feeling. The kind of quiet gut feeling that doesn't shout, just waits. Something was off. He started working late, keeping his phone face down, and he suddenly had this new cologne, one I never bought him. He said he had a client dinner on Friday night, some big deal to celebrate. I wasn't invited. That was the final red flag. So I got curious. That's when the little clues started falling into place. A strange text preview, half hidden on his phone. Can't wait to see you tonight, face blowing a kiss. I wasn't the one who sent it. A receipt tucked in his pants pocket from a jewelry store. No gift ever made it home. And then I checked social media. Hers. She was careless. A reflection of him in her sunglasses. A soft launch of betrayal, posted with a quote about new beginnings. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even confront him. Instead, I got smart. That's when I found him, her husband. Or rather, her still husband. A quick search, a little digging, and there he was. Recently separated, not yet divorced, and very open to a conversation. He was charming, older than I expected, and completely unaware of what his wife had been doing. When I told him, he blinked once and said, "Well, looks like we're both in the same boat." We shared stories, exchanged screenshots, laughed a little over how blind we both had been. And then we made a plan. A calm, perfect plan. He rented a suit. I wore my sharpest dress. We agreed, no drama. Just presence. We would walk in together. No announcement. No confrontation. Just timing. Just truth. Just impact. The night of the dinner, we arrived 5 minutes late on purpose. The kind of late that guarantees every head turn. My heels clicked against marble floors. I smiled wide, heart racing but steady. His hand was on my back, light but supportive. My husband raised his glass, unaware. Then he saw me. And then he saw him. That's when the real celebration began. Her name was Elise. Perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect at pretending to be something she wasn't. The more I looked into her, the more the cracks began to show. And the biggest one, she was still legally married. It didn't take much to find out. A quick check through public records showed no finalized divorce. Just a filed separation over a year ago and nothing. No closure. No signed papers. No official split. Which meant my husband's mistress was technically still someone else's wife. I hesitated before reaching out to him. What do you even say to a man whose wife is sleeping with your husband? I kept it short and respectful. I believe we have something in common. You might want to talk. He responded within an hour, curious and polite. His name was Adrian. Tall, thoughtful, and unexpectedly warm. He wasn't angry, at least not in the loud way. More disappointed than anything else. He'd loved Elise once deeply, but she'd left without explanation, just drifted away. No closure, no honesty, and definitely no divorce. We met for coffee, both of us unsure what to expect. But there was no awkwardness. Instead, there was this strange sense of ease, like meeting someone who understands without needing too many words. He listened to everything I said, and when I showed him the evidence, screenshots, receipts, even Elise's photos with my husband, he just nodded slowly. "Well," he said with a half smile, "looks like your husband and my wife deserve each other." Something about him made me feel seen. Not pitted, not judged, just understood. We talked longer than we meant to. About betrayal. About disappointment. About the way people like Elise and my husband leave little messes behind without ever looking back. And by the end of that conversation, we had the same idea at the same time. What if, I asked carefully, we let them celebrate together? And crash their little party? He added, eyes sparkling with the kind of calm mischief I hadn't felt in weeks. Exactly. He laughed. You know, I still have a tux. Haven't worn it in a while, but it still fits. We agreed to make it a night they wouldn't forget. No yelling, no chaos, just truth. Dressed to the nines. A perfectly timed entrance. Let the liars see what real class looks like when it walks into a room holding receipts and each other's arm. And that's how our fake date was born. But as we planned it, it didn't feel fake at all. The night before the ambush, I sat alone on my bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. It should have hurt more. Maybe it did, just in quiet ways I couldn't name. I wasn't crying. I hadn't screamed. But there was a heavy stillness in my chest, like my heart had been packed in cotton just to keep it from breaking too loudly. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the way he smiled at me the same way he smiled at her. The way he made me feel like I was paranoid, needy, dramatic. Like I was the problem. That was the part that bruised the deepest. The gaslighting, the erosion of trust one small lie at a time. I'd replayed every moment. Every late night, every turned phone, every sudden meeting that didn't include me. For a while, I questioned myself. Was I not enough? Too boring? Too predictable? But no, that wasn't it. The truth was simpler. He did it because he could. Because he thought I wouldn't find out. And if I did, I wouldn't do anything about it. He was wrong. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to throw things or beg him to stay. That kind of reaction would only feed his ego. No, I chose strategy. I chose class. I chose timing. So I gathered everything, screenshots, receipts, timestamp. I made a folder titled, For When I Stopped Pretending. And once I connected with Adrian, Elise's still husband, the plan started to come alive. We met again at a tailor's. He needed something sharp, something that said confidence and control without a word. I held up a dark blue blazer. This one, I said. It'll match the look on her face when she sees you. He grinned. You're scary good at this. I've had practice, I replied, trying not to laugh. The tailor raised an eyebrow as we plotted payback while measuring inseam. Adrian joked about whether cufflinks were too dramatic. I said, if you're crashing a celebration of lies, you might as well sparkle. By the time we left the shop, he looked like every rom-com lead who ever got away. And me? I was ready. Not just with my outfit, but with my resolve. That night, I lay back down. Same bed, same ceiling fan. But the weight in my chest had shifted. It wasn't heartbreak anymore. It was anticipation. Elise's life online looked perfect. Her Instagram was full of sunny brunches, filtered beach photos, quotes about love, and carefully staged candid smiles. She looked like someone who had it all: charm, beauty, elegance. But like most things too polished, it was all a mask. When I first started digging, I just wanted proof. I didn't expect to find a trail of broken trust that went far beyond me. Adrian helped fill in the gaps. Over coffee one afternoon, he leaned back and said, she always needed an audience more than a partner. He wasn't bitter, just tired. He told me stories I hadn't heard, the kind that made everything make more sense. Elise had cheated before, more than once. She had a pattern. She would find someone successful, someone trusting, and spin a story about her past, how she'd been hurt, misunderstood, ready to start fresh. But it was always a setup. Once someone gave her everything, she looked for someone else. There were money problems too. Adrian mentioned credit cards taken out in both their names, loans he never agreed to, and a business she started that quietly disappeared after draining his savings. She was smart, but not in the honest way. Smart like a con artist. Soft words, quick smiles, and the kind of look that made you doubt yourself before you doubted her. I checked her old posts again, this time with different eyes. There were photos with different men, nothing too obvious, but just enough to notice if you looked close. A watch that changed wrists. The same vacation photo posted twice, a year apart, but with a different special someone cropped in. Adrian and I realized we weren't just two people caught in an affair. We were part of a pattern. She didn't want love. She wanted attention, safety, control. And she picked us because we gave without asking much in return. Because we were easy to lie to, kind, loyal, trusting. That was the turning point. This wasn't just about being cheated on. It was about stopping someone who kept hurting people and getting away with it. Revenge wasn't enough anymore. There had to be consequences. Not just whispers behind her back, but real moments where truth hit her front and center. We weren't just planning a dramatic entrance. We were shining a light on a lie. And for the first time, it felt less like payback and more like something that needed to happen. The restaurant was one of those places with gold trim on the menus and wine glasses that probably cost more than my shoes. The kind of place people go when they want to be seen. Fitting, really. My husband had chosen it to celebrate his success. Elise was already seated beside him, laughing like she didn't have a care in the world. A spotlight of stolen happiness. Adrian and I stepped through the doors like a scene from a slow-burn movie. He wore his navy suit like it was made for him. I wore a dress that whispered power. The maitre d' paused when he saw us, as if sensing the tension before the storm. We didn't rush. Each step across the marble floor echoed with quiet purpose. Heads turned. One by one, the low hum of conversation dipped as people turned to watch us pass. At the center table, my husband leaned back in his chair, wine glass raised mid-toast. He didn't notice us at first, but then his eyes flicked to me and stayed there. His smirk wavered, confusion tightening around his mouth. He lowered the glass slowly, like it might break if he moved too fast. Next to him, Elise looked up and froze. She went pale. Not the faint kind. The kind that says I know exactly what's happening right now, and I can't stop it. Her ex-husband stood calmly beside me, one hand in his pocket, the other resting lightly against my back. We said nothing at first. Silence, in that moment, said everything. A waiter nearby stumbled, eyes caught on us, and spilled champagne onto a man's sleeve. A woman at the next table gasped audibly. The tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. Adrian broke it with a single line, voice smooth and steady. Elise, you forgot to finish our paperwork. Hope you didn't sign anything new too soon. My husband opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. Just don't lie again. Not tonight. He looked stunned. Not guilty caught. There's a difference. He reached for control like it was still in his pocket. You didn't have to do this here, he said, eyes darting around. Actually, I replied, this was the perfect place. You love an audience. Elise tried to speak, but her voice cracked. Adrian just smiled at her, calm as ever. I guess closure looks different depending on who's watching. We turned without waiting for replies. No yelling, no threats. Just two people walking out, stronger, freer, and leaving behind the wreckage they never asked for. I raised my glass slowly, the crystal catching the candlelight just enough to sparkle. Every eye around the table was already on me. My husband sat stiffly, eyes flicking between me and Adrian, unsure of what would happen next. Elise looked like she might faint. I know I'm not exactly on the guest list, I began, voice calm and clear, but I thought it would be rude not to raise a glass. After all, tonight is a celebration, isn't it? A few awkward chuckles rippled through the group. The kind of laughter people offer when they sense danger, but don't understand it yet. I turned slightly to face my husband. To success, to love, to honesty when it happens, and to legal entanglements, past and present. Adrian took a sip of wine, perfectly timed. Elise shifted in her seat, her expression tight. My husband tried to speak, but I lifted my glass a little higher. It's amazing what you learn when you're not looking for anything. How shared bank statements can tell one story, and shared beds another. And how public records, well, they tell the truth, eventually. Now there was silence. I turned toward Elise. It must be exhausting, juggling relationships, forgetting paperwork, pretending your past doesn't follow you. But don't worry, your husband took care of that for you. Adrian smiled, stepping forward, cool and confident. The paperwork's filed. You'll find access to the joint accounts is frozen as of this morning. I figured if you're going to play single, you might as well live like it. There was a collective intake of breath. Elise opened her mouth, then closed it again, stunned. My husband stared at me, speechless for once. That alone almost made the night worth it. At the far end of the table, a man in a dark suit, my husband's boss, stood up. He muttered something about needing air and excused himself without meeting anyone's eye. I knew he wasn't coming back. I clinked my glass softly with Adrian. To new beginnings, he responded without missing a beat. And clean exits. We didn't make a scene. We didn't need to. We let the truth speak for itself. Sharp, undeniable, final. As we turned to leave, I heard a glass clink against the table and a whisper. She just ended his career. Maybe I did. Or maybe he ended it himself, one lie at a time. Either way, the toast was over. And so was the game. By the next morning, the cracks had turned into collapse. My husband's phone was blowing up. Calls from his boss, board members, even mutual friends who'd been at the dinner. He tried to control the story, of course. Said it was a misunderstanding, that I'd overreacted. But the damage was done. His job required a clean image. Affairs and public scenes didn't exactly inspire confidence. I didn't speak to him again. There was nothing left to say. He sent a long email filled with excuses, explanations, even a line about how this isn't who I am. But it was exactly who he was. He just never expected to get caught in front of witnesses. As for Elise, the consequences came quickly. Adrian wasn't bluffing. He'd locked her out of their shared accounts, paused her credit lines, and contacted his lawyer. She depended on him financially more than she let on, and now she was scrambling. Her polished world unraveled, just like the lies she told. Meanwhile, I packed my things, but I didn't cry. I wasn't numb either. I felt everything. But instead of pain, there was relief. It was like stepping out of a fog I didn't know I'd been living in. I left the house wearing jeans, sneakers, and a quiet kind of power. Later that week, Adrian texted me. Dinner? Not as revenge partners. Just as two people who deserve better. I met him at a little Italian place. Nothing fancy, just warm lighting and real conversation. We talked like old friends, laughed about the madness, and for the first time in a long time, I felt light. There was no pressure, no agenda. Just two people who'd been hurt, finding something steady in the wreckage. After that, I focused on rebuilding. I changed my number, updated my resume, and started taking morning walks. I booked a therapy session. I stopped checking his social media. I stopped wondering if he missed me. It didn't matter anymore. This wasn't a story about a woman who got cheated on. It was about one who stood up, faced the fire, and walked out with her head high. I didn't chase revenge. I let truth do the work. And now, every time I pass a mirror, I recognize the woman looking back. Not broken, not bitter, just free. A few days after the dinner, everything started spilling online. Screenshots surfaced, texts, photos, timeline inconsistencies. People began connecting the dots. Elise's carefully curated world cracked wide open. Someone anonymously posted a side-by-side of her beach selfie with my husband, matched to one she'd posted a year earlier with Adrian. Same dress, same caption, different man. It went viral in our small circle. Friends who had once gushed over her inspirational posts started unfollowing her. A few commented passive-aggressive at first, "Wow, this aged well," before others stopped being subtle. She tried to delete things, block people, rewrite the narrative. But the internet doesn't forget. Especially not when karma shows up carrying receipts. Mutual friends started texting me. I had no idea. If I'd known, she always seemed a little too perfect. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Then came the fallout at my husband's job. One of the dinner guests had quietly passed word to a board member, someone who didn't appreciate scandal, especially not public one. My husband was asked to resign from the advisory panel he'd bragged about for months. His promotion vanished. Emails were sent. Apologies made. But reputations, once stained, don't clean up so easily. The same people who clapped at their toast that night were now whispering behind their backs, pretending not to know them. I wasn't part of the drama anymore. I watched it from a distance, like flipping through a magazine I'd already read. One night, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, glass of wine in hand, phone buzzing with updates I chose not to open. Adrian was with me, feet up on the railing, telling me about his plan to go hiking in Utah next month. He passed me the bottle, raised his glass. To new chapters. I clinked his with mine. To better co-stars. The city below sparkled, soft and loud all at once. We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. I wasn't angry anymore. There was nothing left to burn. The fire had done its job, exposed the rot, cleared the space, made room for something cleaner. That night, I posted one thing to my own feed. A photo of the skyline, wine glass raised in the corner of the frame, my reflection barely visible in the window. No caption, just the image. And if anyone asked later why I looked so calm through it all, I'd smile and say, sometimes you don't need closure, just the right camera angle. I started journaling again the week I moved into my new place. Nothing fancy, just a blank notebook and a pen that didn't run out of ink. The first page was shaky. I didn't know what to write, so I just started with the truth. He cheated. I stayed calm. I walked out. Each entry peeled back a layer. Not just about what he did, but what I ignored. The signs I pushed aside. The way I shrunk myself to keep the peace. The silence I swallowed because I thought love meant patience. Writing helped. The power I had shown on the outside needed somewhere soft to land inside me. That's where the healing started. Not in the big moments, but in the quiet ones. I booked my first therapy session on a Tuesday. I walked in carrying guilt, confusion, and this strange fear that maybe I'd failed. But my therapist was gentle and honest. She didn't ask me to forget. She helped me understand. We talked about boundaries, about why betrayal cuts so deep, about how being strong doesn't mean skipping the grief. On weekends, I started going to yoga. At first, I just wanted the stillness, something that didn't ask anything of me. But over time, I found myself breathing deeper, moving easier, noticing how my body began to trust me again. It wasn't about flexibility. It was about presence. Then one day, I said yes to coffee with someone new. Not because I was trying to fill space, but because I didn't feel broken anymore. We talked about books, movies, travel, nothing too personal. I liked that. No pressure. No pretending. A few weeks later, I wrote in my journal, I didn't just lose a husband. I lost dead weight. That line stayed with me. Not out of anger, just truth. He held me back in ways I didn't even see. Now, I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying a suitcase full of someone else's mess, and finally set it down. One morning, I opened my laptop and booked a flight to Italy. No return date yet. Just one seat, one suitcase, one plan, explore. I marked places on a map, Florence, Amalfi, Venice. I didn't know what I'd find there, but I knew what I was leaving behind. This time, the celebration would be mine. No lies, no betrayal. Just a woman standing tall, ordering pasta, sipping wine on a cobblestone street, smiling, not because someone else gave her a reason, but because she found her own. And that was enough. It had been a few quiet months. The kind where nothing dramatic happened, and that was exactly how I liked it. I had just come back from Italy, my suitcase still half unpacked, when I found the envelope in my mailbox. It was addressed to me, but inside was a photocopy of a legal notice. Elise was suing Adrian, her ex, for a share of his business assets. According to the letter, she claimed she had contributed emotional support and lifestyle alignment, whatever that meant. I stared at the words, half laughing, half annoyed. She hadn't changed, still reaching, still grasping for things that didn't belong to her. I took a photo of the letter and sent it to Adrian with one line. Need a witness? He replied almost instantly, "Only if you promise to bring the same dress you wore that night." We met for lunch a few days later. Different from before, less tension, more ease. The restaurant was small and quiet, tucked into a corner of town. He greeted me with a hug that lingered just long enough to say something had shifted. We talked about the case, of course, but also about everything else. Travel, music, books. He asked about my trip. I told him about the pasta in Florence and the church bells in Venice. He smiled the way someone does when they're really listening. "You seem lighter," he said. "I am." He nodded. "So am I." There was a moment of silence. Not awkward, just full. Like both of us were feeling something, but neither wanted to push too fast. We'd already been through enough storm. No need to rush sunshine. Before we left, he pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. It was of the two of us, taken by a waiter that night at the dinner. We were walking out together, shoulders touching, both looking ahead. Strong, unshaken, united. "I kept it," he said quietly. "Not because of what we did, but because of how you made me feel that night." I looked at the photo, then at him, and I realized the armor I'd worn for so long wasn't needed anymore. He wasn't just the man who stood beside me that night. He was someone who saw me, truly saw me, even in the mess. We didn't make promises. We didn't define anything. But as we walked out together, side by side once again, I felt something real starting to grow. Funny how the worst night of your life can introduce you to the best person you never saw coming.